All right, so if you remember, guys, I did post this on YouTube a little while ago. We had a discussion about the characters qualified for Capcom Cup. This was right before the floodgates were unleashed, where all the World Warrior regional finals were going to trickle in. So this was on, what, 11/13. So this was how the lay of the land was right before everyone was qualifying. The vast majority of the qualifiers, I believe 24 or 26 out of the 48 qualifiers come from the World Warrior regional finals. So that's the biggest chunk of all the representatives. The majority of them are now done. So we now have 40, I believe, out of the 48 players qualified for Capcom Cup that we're going to see at the final cup. So this is how it looked before we had a lot of like regional representation from all over the world from the World Warrior regional finals. And we went from this, 4 Kens, Ken running the show, 2 DJs Lukes, 1 of everybody else, and a lot of characters not yet represented, to this. You know, Chun-Li's looking good. 3 JPs now, 3 juries. Jury's stepping it up. But wait, no, not quite. Actually, we have a lot of DJ. We had 6 DJ. Who's that above him? Oh, 7 Kens. Wait, who's that above him? 8 Lukes. We are back to Luke supremacy. This is actually very nostalgic. Listen, if you played Street Fighter V the final season, if you watched Capcom Cup the final season, you should feel right at home. Luke reigning supreme once again. So yeah, this is the current distribution of the main characters that the players are playing at Capcom Cup, or the characters they use to qualify. So I didn't include secondaries in this. I tallied this up myself here just to show an at a glance look at what characters were getting people into the cup. And yeah, a lot of Luke here, a lot of Ken, a lot of DJ, and then kind of a little bit of a drop off. Overall, I gotta say, I feel like this looks worse than it really is on paper. Before we get into any of these kind of discussions, like, it's always important to remember that, one, tournament results don't always 100% reflect the true endgame meta or necessarily reflect the balance of the cast, even though I do think there's a lot of takeaways to get from this. 2, even more so, these are all very region locked events for the most part, and that skews the data a lot. Not every region is as competitively dense and stacked as the other. That's just a fact of how it is. Certain regions have more density of top players, which might actually prevent certain characters from qualifying. On the flip side, certain regions might have less top level competition, which allows other characters to qualify. Like, both things can be true at the same time. So you can't 100% take away like too many conclusions from this. You know, it's kind of just for fun to see what we're going to see at Capcom Cup. So like, there's not an exact science, but I think this is interesting to see. And I feel like a lot of people saw these numbers and started getting a little depressed, but we'll break this down a little bit later. And in fact, I think we should compare this to past Capcom Cups. Was it worse before in Street Fighter V? Was it better? Like, let's get some data. So actually, Cat Cammy here on Twitter did a really amazing breakdown. This is far more detailed than what I did, and on YouTube, you know, we'll link all this so you can check it out. But what this breakdown did is it included every single top 8 for a CPT qualifier. So the CPT qualifiers we have are the World Warrior finals, the online premieres, which is the one-shot open bracket for the online regions, and then the offline premieres, Evo, CPT France, CPT Singapore. So they're tallying up all of the top 8 inclusions. So Ken here, for example, was in top 8 the most number of times across all these events. It was in top 8 52 times. That's the total height of this bar. Qualified would be the teal here. Top 4 is like this peach color. And the remaining who didn't get top 4 and didn't qualify are represented by top 8. So total here, top 8, all of them were 52, right? So it gives you an idea of not just who qualified, but how common these characters are. Because even though Luke here is the most qualified, he has Cat Cammy included secondaries in their breakdown, so they put 10. In my breakdown, I only included mains to make it a little bit more streamlined. So for example, Mena RD, I put as a Blanca main, but Mena RD also plays Luke. So there's a bit of some nuance here in the data set. They put Luke as 10 qualifiers, but Ken as 8, but Ken is higher up on the total top 8 representation. And it's also interesting when you look at JP, like, this is a character that I expected and many people expected to have more people qualified, but JP only has 3 qualified. So on my tier list here, you know, he's down in, you know, 5th place tied with Jury down here. But he's actually top 3 in representation and has, I believe, the most top 4 placements. So JP is like the guy getting the closest the most, but not closing out. But I think, like I mentioned before, you got to look at the regions. I think the best JP players in the world are in regions like Asia and China and Japan. In China alone, you're going to have VX Bao, you're going to have DCQ, and those are 2 of the top JPs in the world. And only one of them can qualify per event. China still has their World Warrior regional finals though, so there's still a chance that VXPAL could qualify. Then in Japan, you have Kakadu, Nemo, Fenrich, Aqua, all these amazing players, but once again, only 2 people from Japan can qualify, and that's where the majority of the best JP players in the world are. So a lot of JPs all over the world got close, but not many closed out, whereas Ken and Luke, Ken and Luke are like standard, straightforward, strong Shoto type. Like they're very, very centralizing in the meta in the sense that they're super strong and play a basic game plan. So it's a character archetype that more players will gravitate towards. So that makes sense to me. And then on the tail end here, you got Aki and Jamie in top 8 twice. I think that might have been both Broski. And then the funny thing about Zangief, he's been in top 8 3 times, but has a 33% qualification rate because out of those 3 times, Snake Eyes got in there once and actually qualified. So he has the highest percentage of percent qualified out of top 8 besides Luke. Or actually Guile too. Guile is 22%. So Zangief, consistent? Consistency, right? Yeah, you gotta zoom out on the numbers. But is it all bad? Like, is this really representative of a meta that's getting stale? Like it's all Luke, Ken, DJ. And I was wondering about that myself, and then I figured like we should look back at the past Capcom Cups, especially Capcom Cup 2016, which was season 1 of Street Fighter V. I think looking at a first season is a more apples to apples comparison. So I tallied up the qualifiers and their characters for Capcom Cup 2016 and for Capcom Cup 2022, the last Capcom Cup for Street Fighter V, to really get an idea. Because remember, this was the qualification. I made a video about this. This was the characters that got into Capcom Cup originally for the last season of Street Fighter V. This is a big difference. I feel like what happened with Street Fighter V Season 5 was far worse than what we got Season 1 of Street Fighter 6. Season 1 Street Fighter 6 is a first season of a fighting game, and I think they got the balance really good personally, but I think it's way worse to take a mature existing meta and then introduce a final DLC character that is so streamlined and makes so many characters redundant because he's just like that. He's that character, but better. So many competitive players were forced to play Luke or be left behind. And I think this was way more egregious than any balancing we have in season 1 of Street Fighter 6. So I actually did the number crunching. I crunched the numbers. We got spreadsheets galore these days. I'm addicted to the Google Sheets here. For Capcom Cup 2016, I tallied up all the players, their characters, and their secondaries. So I didn't include the secondaries in the appearances because it gets a little funky with that data. So I just wanted to look at like what was the spread of characters in Capcom Cup 2016, and it was pretty good. Ken, Chun-Li were leading the pack with 5, so there was no character that like really stood out. 5, 4, 3, and it was pretty even spread. However, a lot of characters didn't make the cut, and I don't think this is a fair comparison because there was actually a lot of DLC in Street Fighter V prior to Capcom Cup. Urien came out the last in like September, and then Capcom Cup was like in December or something like that, or January. So there was a lot of DLC in there, but there was characters like Rashid, Laura. Laura was used as a secondary. Rashid, Laura, and who else? Zangief and Birdie. They were season 1 characters that didn't make it in. So out of all the characters at the time of Capcom Cup, 21 characters, 57% made it into the cup. And, no one was better than 15% of the total representatives. So out of all the characters that were represented in the qualification in the cup, Ken and Chun-Li were tied for 15.63%. And it wasn't that bad. I thought there might be more Chun-Li and more Armika from the rest of the pack, but this is a decent spread. However, how does that compare to Capcom Cup 2022? There's a total of 45 characters in the game. I didn't list them all off. We had a pretty big drop off in terms of character representation, actually. So this time in 2016, we had 57% of the total cast represented, and 2022, only 53% were represented. And once again, this is for mains. More characters showed up because people did have secondaries. So this isn't like the most clean data. I didn't want to include secondaries. That would just make it too complicated. But look at Luke, dude. 26% of mains. This is the doing of Luke. He was absorbing every other character that could have possibly been played. It all became Luke, and surprisingly Birdie. There's a lot of Birdies, but once again, Birdie wasn't like that amazing the meta. It's just more about regional representation, allowing oddball characters to get in. Fong, Birdie, they're the 2 highest besides Luke. Isn't that weird? So it just feels like a lot of the top tier characters were all absorbed by Luke. Luke really was running the show. Towards the end of the bracket, though, a lot of the Lukes were eliminated in group stages. So I think our top 16 as a show was really good, and there was a lot of variety. Like a lot of these characters were in the top 16 down below. So this data is only for the group stages. If you did a different data set with the top 16 and beyond when it was the bracket stages, it would look a lot more varied for sure. So I don't think it was that bad in terms of a viewer experience in the finals, but this is the reality of the qualification, right? So 26% Luke. Now, if we take the same sort of metrics and apply it to Capcom Cup 2023, it's looking pretty good for Street Fighter 6, man. So far, we're only 40 out of 48 qualifiers done so far, okay? So there's 48 qualifiers. We only have 40 of them in right now. And we already have 65% of the cast represented. Yes, Luke is 20%. It's not great, and it could get worse, but I have a feeling based on the remaining regions, it's probably going to get better. 26% with 11 is not as bad as 8 right now. So it could get worse, but the drop-off isn't as steep. So yes, we have a lot of Ken and DJ and Chun-Li, but I'd rather have this slower decline than this clear rift between Luke and everybody else. Ending Walker, the UK World Warrior and the UK Premier have not happened yet, so there's going to be 2 players from UK who are going to get in at the end. So players like Broski using Aki, who won the last World Warrior qualifier, number 5, with Aki, and then Ending Walker, who does play Ryu, but has been playing a lot of DJ recently, so he might just be another DJ. They could get in for those characters. So there's a lot of possibility here. I mean, I don't really foresee Jamie at all. Jamie's the one I think it's least likely to get in. Manon's gonna be rough. I don't see Honda or Kimberly getting in, or Lily, but I think Ryu or Aki, there's a chance you see some of them at the cup, like as a secondary maybe for Ryu, and as Broski pulls off a miracle. But yeah, overall it could be worse is what I'm getting at. Season 1 of Street Fighter 5 I think had a better spread, but a lot of characters were neglected. It had a smaller starting roster, and a lot of characters released as DLC, so it's hard for people to pick these characters up and take them to Capcom Cup, so that kind of impacted it. Street Fighter 6 had 2 more characters at launch and then introduced 2 DLC characters. But yeah, I think overall for our first draft, I don't know. I don't see it as being that bad. I think that it could be better for sure, but I don't think it's as miserable as people are making it out to be. And I feel like a lot of variety will be revealed the later portion of the Capcom Cup bracket after group stages are done. So I just wanted to go over these stats. I thought it was pretty cool. I wanted to crunch some numbers, and Cat Cammy here with this detailed breakdown really inspired me. So that's really all I have. That's it. So I don't know, if you're on YouTube, let me know what you think about the current spread of Capcom Cup characters, how things are going with the Capcom Cup scene, and are you excited for Capcom Cup? Because I am. $2 million, a lot of money. All right, catch you in the next video. Peace.